Maria had always loved long drives. They gave her time to think, breathe, and feel calm. That morning, she left early for a trip to visit her family. The sky was clear, the road was quiet, and everything seemed peaceful. She drove for hours through the wide desert highway, enjoying the open space. The sun was warm, and the land around her looked endless, with tall, dry grass and soft hills moving gently with the wind. But peace can change quickly. And Maria learned that day. Her car began making a strange sound she had never heard before, first a low hum, then a sharp click, and finally a sudden stop. The engine died without warning. She pressed the gas again and again, but the car refused to start. She tried not to panic. She breathed slowly and reminded herself that people traveled this road all the time. Someone would pass by eventually. Maria stepped out of the car and looked around. The only thing she could see nearby was an old wooden fence stretching toward a small ranch in the distance. A weathered sign hung crookedly on the gate. She could not read the words from far away, but she could tell someone lived there. Smoke rose gently from a chimney, and a horse stood near the fence, its tail moving lazily. She knew walking there was her best chance for help. The desert air was dry, and the ground was dusty under her shoes. As Maria walked, she felt a mix of worry and hope. She wondered who owned the ranch. Would they be friendly? Would they be home? She had heard that ranch people were often kind and helpful, but she had also heard they liked their privacy. Still, she had no choice but to try. The ranch belonged to a man named Luke, a quiet, strong rancher who had lived alone for many years. People in town knew him as someone who helped travelers whenever he could. He rarely talked about himself, but everyone respected him. Maria did not know any of this. To her, it was just a place with a roof, and that was enough. As she walked closer, she admired the ranch. It was simple but beautiful in its own way. The wooden house stood tall, with wide windows and a long porch. A couple of barns rested behind it, their red paint faded by time. The sound of chickens and the low call of cattle echoed softly across the land. It all felt peaceful, almost comforting. Then something unexpected happened, something that changed the calm afternoon into a moment filled with fear and confusion. Maria suddenly felt a sharp sting on her upper chest, like something hit her. She gasped and stopped walking. She looked down and saw a small iron arrow sticking out of her shirt. Her breath caught in her throat. She did not fully understand what had happened, but she knew she needed help immediately. Her legs felt weak. The desert road blurred in front of her. She took a few steps toward the ranch, trying to stay calm, even though her heart was racing. She whispered to herself, "Just reach the house. Someone will help." She stumbled as she neared the gate. Her voice came out shaky as she called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" The sound of her call reached Luke, who was in his barn fixing a broken tool. He paused when he heard her. The voice was soft, but it carried fear. He rushed outside, wiping his hands on his shirt, and scanned the area. That was when he saw her Maria standing unsteadily near his fence. Luke hurried toward her. "Are you all right?" he asked. His voice steady but filled with concern. Maria tried to answer, but her words came out in short breaths. I need help." When Luke reached her, he noticed the small iron arrow. He didn't know exactly where it had come from, but he understood one thing clearly. She needed attention, and she needed it fast. Without asking too many questions, Luke gently supported her by the shoulders and guided her toward his porch. "You're going to be okay," he told her softly. "Just stay with me." Maria nodded weakly. She trusted him, even though she did not know his name. Something about his calm voice and steady movements made her feel safer. Luke helped her sit on a wooden chair on the porch. The afternoon breeze brushed her face, and she tried to focus on breathing. He looked at the iron arrow without touching it. The design seemed old-fashioned, handmade, not something people use today. "Did you see where it came from?" Luke asked carefully. Maria shook her head. "No. I just felt something hit me." Luke didn't want her to worry even more, so he didn't say what he was thinking, that someone might be nearby. Instead, He stepped inside his house and quickly returned with a small first aid kit. The ranch was far from town, so he had learned to handle many emergencies himself. He knelt beside her and spoke gently. I need to remove this so you can breathe freely. I'll be careful. You just focus on staying relaxed. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Not from pain alone, but from fear and exhaustion. Still, she nodded bravely. Luke worked calmly, speaking softly to keep her steady. He told her about the ranch, the horses, the quiet mornings, anything to keep her mind away from worry. His tone was reassuring, warm, and patient. Little by little, she relaxed her shoulders and breathed more evenly. When he finally removed the iron arrow with slow, careful hands, Maria cried out softly, unable to stop the tears running down her cheeks. Luke's face softened with empathy. He gently bandaged her chest with steady hands, making sure not to cause her any more discomfort. It's all right, he whispered. You're safe now. Maria covered her face with her hands, tears still coming. She wasn't crying from the pain anymore, she was crying from fear, from shock, and from relief, all at once. Everything had happened so fast that her thoughts were tangled. Luke stayed beside her, giving her the space to breathe. You're doing well, he said kindly. Really well. After a few minutes, Maria lowered her hands and looked at him. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what would have happened if you weren't here. Luke shook his head. Anyone would have helped. She wasn't so sure. Something about him, his patience, his calm strength, made her believe not everyone would have reacted as he did. The sun began to lower in the sky, casting a golden glow across the ranch. Luke noticed Maria shivering slightly and guided her into the house, where it was warm and quiet. He made her a cup of tea and placed it in her hands. She held it tightly, letting the warmth comfort her. Do you live alone? She asked. Yes, Luke replied simply. It's just me and the ranch. Maria nodded slowly, studying him. He looked kind, strong, and thoughtful. Someone who had learned how to handle life's difficult moments alone. She suddenly remembered her car and sighed. My car broke down on the road. That's why I was walking. Luke offered a gentle smile. We'll take care of that later. For now, you just rest. Maria leaned back in the chair, feeling a surprising sense of safety in a place she had never been before. She didn't understand why someone would shoot an arrow, or who it could have been. But she knew one thing. She had reached the right place at the right time. Luke stood by the window, looking out at the quiet land. The wide fields, the long shadows, the gentle wind. Everything looked peaceful. But his mind wasn't peaceful. The iron arrow bothered him deeply. It didn't belong in a place like this. Someone must have been nearby. Someone hiding. He didn't want to scare Maria, so he kept his thoughts to himself. But he made a silent promise to protect her until he knew she was truly safe. Maria watched him from her seat. She didn't know much about him, but she sensed strength and kindness in every movement he made. She felt grateful to him, in a way she couldn't describe. The desert outside grew quieter as evening approached. Inside the warm ranch house, Maria closed her eyes for a moment and let her body rest. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she wasn't alone anymore. And for now, that was enough. Maria sat quietly in the warm living room of the ranch house, holding the cup of tea Luke had given her. The steam touched her face softly, and the gentle smell helped her relax a little. She had been trembling earlier, but now her hands were steadier. Even so, her mind was full of confused thoughts, and her heart was still beating faster than normal. Luke sat across from her, watching her carefully. He didn't want her to feel scared or alone. He had seen travelers in trouble before, but something about Maria made him more protective than usual. Maybe it was the way she tried to stay calm even though she was clearly frightened. Maybe it was the quiet strength in her eyes. Whatever it was, he felt responsible for her safety. Is the tea helping? Luke asked gently. Maria nodded. Yes. Thank you. I'm feeling a little better. I'm. Luke gave a small smile. Good. That's all you need to focus on right now. Quote. Um, quote, quote, Maria wanted to ask many questions who had done this, why it had happened, and what she should do next, but her mind was too overwhelmed. Instead, she took another slow sip of her tea and let the warmth spread through her. Luke stood up after a moment. I'm going to get some supplies. I want to check your bandage again to make sure everything is okay. Maria swallowed nervously, remembering the moment he had removed the small iron arrow earlier. It had hurt, and she had cried. But she also remembered how patient and kind Luke had been. He had spoken gently, given her time, and made sure she never felt alone. Because of that, she trusted him. All right, she said softly. Luke returned with a small box filled with clean cloth, warm water, and a soothing cream he kept for emergencies. He placed the box on a table and pulled a chair close to hers. You're doing well, he told her again, trying to help her stay calm. I just want to make sure you're comfortable. Maria nodded. I trust you. Those 3 words touched Luke more deeply than he expected. Trust was something he rarely heard. Living alone on a ranch meant he didn't meet many people. And even when he did, trust took time. But Maria trusted him instantly. And he felt a strong responsibility to honor that trust. He gently unwrapped the bandage, making sure his hands were steady and calm. Maria took slow breaths, watching him work. She tried not to think too much about the earlier moment. Instead, she focused on the peaceful sounds inside the ranch, the ticking clock, the soft breeze touching the windows, and the gentle creak of the wooden floor. Luke cleaned the area carefully, making sure she felt minimal discomfort. If anything hurts, tell me, he said. It's okay, Maria whispered. You're being very gentle. He continued working slowly, making sure she felt safe every moment. When he placed a fresh bandage, she felt relieved. She looked at him with gratitude in her eyes. Thank you, she said again. I don't know what I would have done without you. Luke shook his head. Anyone would have helped. Maria gave him a small smile. Maybe. But not everyone would care this much. Luke didn't answer that. He simply put the supplies away and sat back down across from her. Do you want some water? He asked. Maria nodded, and he handed her a glass. She took a few sips, then placed the glass on the table. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Of course. Do you think someone was nearby? Someone watching? Luke could see the worry in her eyes, and he didn't want to make her more afraid. But he also believed in honesty. I think someone might have been passing through the land, he said calmly. Sometimes people wander near the ranch without meaning any harm. Maria looked down at her hands. But why would something like that happen? I wasn't doing anything. Luke leaned forward slightly. Maria, listen to me. You didn't do anything wrong. Whatever happened is not your fault. His tone was firm, steady, and warm. Maria felt comforted by his words. She sighed softly and leaned back in the chair. Luke stood and went to check the windows. Maria watched him quietly. She admired how calm he was, how he never seemed rushed or panicked. Being in his presence made her feel grounded. He checked the locks, looked outside at the quiet fields, and then returned to sit closer to her. I've lived on this land for years, he said. I know the sounds, the movements, the feel of the place. Right now, everything seems calm. Maria felt some comfort from that. Luke's connection to the land was strong. If he felt things were peaceful, she believed him. She placed a hand on her chest, taking a slow breath. The bandage made her feel safe, and the pain had lessened. Her body still felt weak, but her mind was slowly settling. Thank you for checking everything, she said. Luke nodded. I'll always check. I want you to feel safe here. Maria looked into his eyes. She saw sincerity, a kind of quiet strength that made her feel protected. She didn't know him well, but she sensed he was someone who took responsibility seriously, someone who cared deeply, even if he didn't show it openly. You're very kind, she said softly. Luke scratched the back of his neck, a little shy. I just do what feels right. Maria smiled. I'm glad I came here. Even if everything was scary, I'm glad I ended up at your ranch." Luke didn't say anything for a moment. He looked out the window at the warm, golden fields. "I'm glad you're here too," he said finally. The silence between them was peaceful now, not uncomfortable. Maria leaned back and closed her eyes for a moment, letting her body rest. Luke watched her with quiet concern. She looked tired, fragile, and yet strong at the same time. He stood up softly. "You should rest," he said. "I'll make something for you to eat. You need energy." Maria immediately shook her head. "No, you've already done so much. I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble," Luke replied. "Besides, you won't recover well without something warm." Maria hesitated, then gave a small nod. "All right." Luke moved to the kitchen and began preparing a simple soup. Maria listened to the gentle sounds, water running, vegetables being chopped, the clink of a spoon against a bowl. Even these small sounds made her feel reassured. They reminded her that she was safe, inside a warm house, cared for by someone who genuinely wanted to help. While the soup cooked, Maria stood up slowly and walked to the window. The land outside looked peaceful again. The wide stretches of dry grass, the wooden fence, the gentle wind. It was hard to believe that anything unexpected had happened earlier. Luke came to her side. "The land looks calm, doesn't it?" "Yes," Maria said softly. "It's beautiful." Luke nodded. "It always is at this time of day." They stood in silence for a moment, both looking at the golden glow of the evening sun. Then Maria turned to him. "What happens now?" Luke looked at her kindly. "For now, you rest. After that, we'll figure out your car. And if you want, we'll contact someone who can check the area." Maria nodded, relieved. She didn't want to think too far ahead. She just wanted to feel safe. And with Luke beside her, she did. Luke went to serve the soup, and Maria sat down again. The warm smell filled the room, comforting her even more. When he placed the bowl in front of her, she felt grateful all over again. "You really didn't have to make this," she said. Luke smiled gently. "I wanted to." Maria took a spoonful. It tasted simple, warm, and soothing, just what she needed. As she ate, she felt her strength slowly returning. Luke sat across from her, watching her with quiet attentiveness. For the first time since the day began, Maria felt a sense of calm settle over her. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she wasn't alone anymore. And in that warm, quiet ranch house, with Luke watching over her, she finally felt safe enough to breathe. Maria woke the next morning to the soft sound of birds outside the window. The room she slept in was small but warm, with wooden walls that smelled faintly of pine. A thin line of sunlight entered through the curtains, touching the floor like a warm ribbon. For a moment, she forgot everything that had happened the day before. Her mind felt calm, almost blank, as if she had been dreaming. Then, slowly, the memories returned: the long drive, her car breaking down, the strange moment when she felt something hit her, and the way Luke had helped her so patiently. Her chest felt a little sore, but much better than before. She took a slow breath and sat up carefully. The house was quiet. Maria wondered where Luke was. She stood up, wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, and walked out of the room. The living room was empty, and so was the kitchen. She looked out the window and saw him outside, near the barn, feeding the horses. The early morning sun cast a golden glow around him, and he looked calm and steady, just like the day before. Maria watched him for a moment. There was something very comforting about the way he moved, as if the land listened to him and he listened back. He didn't seem rushed or worried. He carried himself with a quiet confidence that made her feel safe without even speaking. Finally, she opened the door and stepped outside. The cool morning air touched her face gently. Luke noticed her and smiled. "Good morning," he said warmly. "Did you sleep well?" Maria nodded. "Yes. Better than I expected. Thank you for letting me rest here." "You needed it," Luke replied. "How are you feeling now?" "A little sore," she admitted, touching her chest lightly. "But much better." Luke wiped his hands on a cloth and walked toward her. I'm glad. After breakfast, I'll check your bandage again. Maria smiled softly. You don't have to take care of me so much. Luke raised an eyebrow. You think I'll let you walk around in discomfort? Not happening. His gentle firmness made her smile wider. She felt lighter around him, as if his calmness created a safe bubble around the ranch. They went inside, and Luke prepared a simple breakfast. Fresh eggs, warm bread, and fruit. Maria sat quietly, watching him work. She liked the way he moved in the kitchen, slow, steady, thoughtful. When he finally sat down across from her, she felt a strange sense of peace settle around them. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment before Maria spoke. Luke, she said quietly, what do you think happened yesterday? Do you really think someone was just passing through? Luke looked thoughtful. I'm not sure. Something about it didn't feel accidental. Not around this land. But I don't want you to worry. We'll figure it out. Maria nodded slowly, though she still felt a hint of unease. She trusted Luke completely. But the thought of someone hiding nearby made her chest tighten. After breakfast, Luke asked her to sit on the couch so he could check her bandage. He worked with the same gentle care as before, speaking softly so she stayed relaxed. When he finished, she felt refreshed and comfortable again. You're healing well, he told her. Just try not to move too quickly. I won't, she promised. As Maria rested, Luke stepped outside to check his fencing near the barn. She watched from the window, wanting to help, but knowing she needed to take it slow. After a few minutes, she gathered enough strength to walk outside. Luke, she said softly, can I help with anything? He turned to look at her, slightly surprised. You should be resting. I'm feeling better, she insisted gently. And I don't want to sit inside alone all morning. Luke hesitated, then nodded. All right. But nothing heavy. Just stay near me. Maria smiled gratefully. They walked together toward the barn. Luke showed her where the horses slept, where he kept the hay, and how he fed the animals every morning. Maria listened with interest. The ranch felt peaceful, almost healing. She liked hearing Luke talk about it. His voice softened when he spoke about the things he cared for. As they walked back toward the porch, Luke suddenly stopped. Maria looked at him, confused. What is it? She asked. Luke didn't answer immediately. He stared toward the trees at the edge of his land. The wind was moving gently, but there was something else. Something faint, like a soft rustle that didn't match the breeze. Maria followed his gaze. Do you see something? He shook his head slowly. I'm not sure. Stay close to me. Before Maria could respond, a sudden movement came from the tree line. It wasn't loud, it was quick and light, like something gliding through the air. Luke reacted immediately. He stepped in front of Maria and gently guided her back toward the porch. Go inside, he said softly but firmly. Maria's heart began to race. Luke, what is happening? It's all right, Luke said calmly. Just go inside. I'll check. But the moment he turned slightly, Maria gasped. Luke, you're bleeding. Luke looked down at his shoulder and saw a small tear in his shirt, with a faint line of red beneath it. It wasn't deep or dangerous, but it was enough to show something had grazed him. Maria's breath caught in her throat. Her fear was no longer for herself, it was for him. She stepped forward quickly, forgetting her own soreness. Luke, come inside. Let me look at it. It's nothing serious, he said gently. Just a small cut. But you're bleeding, she insisted, her voice trembling. You helped me. Now let me help you. Luke saw the worry in her eyes and didn't argue this time. He let her guide him back into the house. Once inside, Maria led him to the table and gently touched his arm. Sit down, she said softly. Luke obeyed, watching her with quiet amazement. The woman who had been frightened and weak the day before was now steady and focused, her fear replaced by concern for him. Maria brought the first aid box and pulled a chair close to him. Her hands were careful and gentle as she cleaned the small wound. Luke watched her silently, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in many years. You're so calm, he said quietly. Maria gave a small smile. I learned from the best. Yesterday, you were calm for me. Today, it's my turn. Luke let out a soft breath, touched by her words. He could see how shaken she had been before. Yet here she was, helping him without hesitation. You didn't have to do this, he said softly. Maria looked directly into his eyes. Luke, you helped me when I was scared. Now you're hurt. Of course I have to help you. The sincerity in her voice made him look away for a moment, trying to hide the emotion he felt. It had been a long time since anyone had cared about him this way. Maria finished bandaging his shoulder gently. There, she said softly. You'll be okay. Luke nodded. Thank you. But Maria wasn't done worrying. Luke, if something touched you, it means someone might be close. Someone who could hurt you too. Her voice shook slightly. Luke reached out and placed a calm hand on her arm. Maria, listen. I won't let anything happen to you, and I'll be careful, I promise. She nodded, though her eyes still held fear. They sat quietly for a long moment, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. Maria finally broke the silence. Luke, do you think someone is doing this on purpose? Luke looked toward the window, thinking carefully. I've had disagreements with someone in the past about land boundaries. It's possible they're trying to scare me. Maria's eyes widened. But why would they do something like this? Sometimes people act out of anger, Luke said softly, even when they shouldn't. Maria took a deep breath. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. Luke looked at her, surprised. Together? Maria nodded. Yes. You helped me. I won't leave you to face this alone. Luke didn't have the words to answer. Instead, he gave a small, warm smile. A smile Maria had not seen before, soft and meaningful. The morning sun grew brighter, filling the room with gentle light. Despite the fear and confusion, one thing had become clear between them. They were no longer two strangers. They were two people facing the same uncertain moment together. And somewhere deep inside both their hearts, something new and unspoken had begun to grow. Maria spent the rest of the morning sitting near Luke, watching him carefully as he moved around the house. She didn't want him to strain himself, even though the cut on his shoulder was small. Every time he lifted something or reached for something high, she felt a small spark of worry. Luke noticed her watching him and smiled softly. I'm all right, Maria, he said calmly. Really? I know, she replied. But I still worry. Luke paused and looked at her gently. And I appreciate that. Their quiet conversation was interrupted by the soft sound of wind brushing against the windows. The ranch felt peaceful again, but both of them knew things were not completely normal. Someone had been near the land. Someone had tried to frighten them, even if they didn't know why. The uncertainty lingered like a light shadow in the room. After a while, Maria stood up. I want to get some fresh air, she said. But, will you come with me? Luke nodded. Of course. They stepped outside together, walking slowly toward the open fields. The sun was brighter now, warming their faces. The sky was a soft blue, with only a few white clouds drifting lazily above them. The air smelled of dry grass and warm earth. Maria felt comfort in the natural beauty surrounding them. It reminded her that the world could still be peaceful, even when things felt uncertain. They walked to the fence line, where the field stretched far into the distance. Luke rested one hand on the wooden rail and looked around quietly. Maria stood close to him, watching the landscape with thoughtful eyes. Luke, she said softly, do you think whoever was here will come back? Luke took a slow breath. I don't know. But I do know one thing. We won't let fear decide how we live. This ranch has been my home for years. I won't let the actions of someone else take that away. Maria admired his strength. Not the loud kind, but the quiet, steady kind that lives deep inside a person. She wanted to feel that same strength growing inside herself. I understand, she whispered. Luke turned to her. And you're not alone anymore. Not while you're here. Maria felt her heart tighten gently, not in fear, but in warmth. She didn't know how to thank him, so she simply nodded. They spent a few more minutes outside before Luke suggested checking her car. If we can fix it today, you'll be able to drive back home. Or, you can stay longer if you want. Maria looked down at her hands. She knew she had to return to her normal life sooner or later, but a part of her didn't want to leave just yet. The ranch felt peaceful, almost healing. Luke's presence made her feel safe in a way she hadn't expected. "I'll see," she said softly. "Let's check the car first." They walked together down the dusty road toward where her small car still waited. The sun warmed the metal, making it shine slightly. Maria felt a small flutter of hope maybe everything would finally go back to normal. Luke opened the hood and inspected the engine. His hands were skilled, steady, and familiar with hard work. Maria watched him quietly, admiring how effortlessly he seemed to understand what needed to be done. "It looks like your battery connection came loose," he said after a moment. "I can fix that." "Really?" Maria asked, relieved. Luke nodded. "Yes, give me a moment." He tightened a few wires and cleaned the connectors with a small cloth he always carried in his truck. When he finished, he closed the hood and gestured for Maria to try starting the car. Maria got into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine started immediately, humming smoothly. Maria let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "It works," she said happily. Luke smiled. "Told you it was simple." Maria stepped out of the car and stood in front of him. "Luke, thank you for everything. For helping me, for protecting me, for taking care of me." Luke looked down, a little shy. "You would have done the same." Maria shook her head gently. "I don't think you realize how much you've done." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world felt quiet and still. After a few seconds, Luke cleared his throat. "Let's walk back. The sun is getting strong." They walked together toward the ranch again. Maria felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that her car worked, sadness that she might have to leave soon, and warmth for the man walking beside her. When they reached the porch, Luke looked at her softly. "Maria, you don't have to leave today. You're welcome to stay a little longer if you want. You need rest." Maria hesitated. She wanted to stay, but she didn't want to be a burden. "Are you sure I won't trouble you?" Luke let out a small laugh. "Maria, you're not trouble. I enjoy your company." The simplicity of his words touched her deeply. She nodded slowly. "Then, maybe I can stay one more night." Luke smiled warmly. "Good." They spent the afternoon doing quiet activities together. Luke showed her how to feed the horses. Maria laughed when one horse nudged her gently with its nose, asking for more food. Luke chuckled at her reaction, enjoying her bright energy. Later, they sat on the porch with cold drinks, watching the soft breeze move through the tall grass. The sky turned orange as the sun lowered. Maria felt peaceful for the first time in a long while. "Luke," she said softly, "I don't think I ever asked. Why do you live alone here?" Luke looked at the horizon thoughtfully. "The ranch has been in my family for generations. After my parents passed, I stayed here. I feel connected to this place. The quiet. The land. It's all I've ever known." Maria nodded. "It suits you." Luke smiled faintly. "Maybe. But sometimes." Maria looked down at her drink. "I understand that feeling." Luke turned to her. "Do you?" She nodded. "Yes. I've been living by myself for a long time too. I have friends. I have work. But sometimes it feels like something is missing. Like there's a part of life I haven't found yet." Luke listened carefully, his eyes gentle. For a moment, neither of them said anything. They just sat quietly, letting the evening wrap around them like a soft blanket. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Luke stood up. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's check the house one last time before night. Just to be sure." Maria followed him inside. He checked the doors, the windows, and the barn. Everything was quiet. Nothing seemed out of place. "You see," Luke said, I think whoever was here earlier is long gone. Maria felt relief wash over her. Good. I don't want you to get hurt again. Luke looked at her warmly. I'll be careful. And I'll make sure you're safe too. Maria held his gaze, feeling something deep and unspoken between them. She felt safe, completely safe with him. Dinner was simple but comforting. They talked gently, laughed a few times, and shared small stories about their lives. As the night grew deeper, the house felt even more peaceful. Maria was tired, but she didn't feel the fear or heaviness she had felt before. Before she went to bed, she stood in front of Luke. Thank you, she said softly. Luke tilted his head. For what? For everything, she whispered. For being here. Luke looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were warm, steady, and filled with a quiet kindness. I'm glad you came here, he said simply. Maria felt her breath catch. She nodded and went to her room. That night, she slept deeply, without fear, without worry. And the next morning, when she stood outside looking at the rising sun, she realized something. Meeting Luke had changed her. She no longer felt alone. And even though she would soon return to her normal life, she knew this place, and this man would always stay with her. Luke stepped onto the porch and stood beside her, silent but close. She smiled at him. Good morning, she said softly. Good morning, he replied. They looked at the sunrise together, two people who were now connected by a moment that had started with fear, but ended with something gentle, warm, and lasting. And though Maria didn't know what the future held, she knew one thing clearly. The rancher who had once protected her had also healed a part of her heart, and she had healed something in him, too. The story that began with fear ended with hope, quiet, honest, and real.